Hello! And welcome to the fourth episode of Real Gambling Review, the betting podcast from us, the makers of Modern Media Review. I'm Robin Gibson.
I'm Sean Gollogly.
And we're going to be talking about betting as usual until the fun stops in big letters. But before we do that, I'd just like to say to listeners, don't forget that we're available on all the major platforms, Spotify, Apple, Google, you name it. We've got a website, modernmediareview.com, and if you like what you hear, consider subscribing on YouTube or Apple or Spotify or one of the major platforms, and leave a review or a comment or even just a like if you like it. We'll even take the thumbs down if you don't like it. Any sort of interaction and proof of intelligent life is welcome.
Absolutely.
But anyway, on with the betting. We've had a bit of a delay because the first
technical issues.
The first take on the podcast was subject to a minor recording error, which wouldn't normally be of any interest. But we started out originally straight after the FA Cup draw.
Yeah.
So we could talk about the FA Cup betting. What round is it, Sean?
Third round.
I'm no expert. The third round, yeah.
When the Premier League teams come into the...
Yes, I always forget which round that is.
Well, it's different in Scotland anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, not so many Premier teams, so to speak. It was as boring as I usually find it, Sean.
You're very hard to please, Robin.
Well, you know, you're going to talk about this, aren't you? There's no magic in the Cup for me.
Yes.
And I support St Mirren. We've won the Scottish Cup 3 times, which is a lot more than a lot of clubs in Scotland, apart from Rangers and Celtic.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't see this magic of the FA Cup anymore.
Well, the poor old BBC now, they can't afford much sport, so they've managed somehow to... empty the piggy bank to cover the FA Cup football. And of course we hear about the romance of the Cup and giant killing acts and all the rest of it. And when you actually go into the details, especially in terms of betting, you can have as much 2,500 to 1 Tranmere as you want, Robin, because none of those teams are going to be...
They are 2,500 to 1.
They are. I know they are. And you can have 10,000 with me if you want, because they won't be winning it. In fact, the last team from outside the top flight to actually win at Wembley, and it was the old Wembley, was West Ham in 1980. So that shows you the tough task that normal teams have.
Yes, it's nonsense, but I mean, I remember colleagues and friends of mine often betting these teams who go on a tiny FA Cup run at
Yeah.
4-figure prices. And can I just interrupt to say that Tranmere are in fact 2,500 to 1.
They are.
Bet Victor, which someone must have hacked their account because no one else has got them at 2,500 to 1.
Well, I think they could have them at 20,000 to 1 if they wanted, really.
Well, they're going out on a limb here with Tranmere, Rochdale, Shrewsbury, Northampton. But I think that nowadays that kind of betting activity by...
must be dead, surely.
No, by hopeful fans has probably been bolstered recently since Leicester won the Premier League. Because they were what price were they?
5,000 to 1, was it?
And what's more, like, I know people who shrewdly, although they don't strike me as shrewd people, I'm not going to name them, went in about halfway through because they were still a huge price.
Absolutely.
They were still 66 and then 33s, because even when the evidence was in front of your eyes...
No one could quite believe it would happen.
No, and the bookmakers didn't either. And they were really giving out far too big prices based on the statistic that a team like Leicester hadn't won the Premier League for so long, and that it was a small group of elite clubs who always won it.
Well, just to outline Tranmere's dilemma here, or the task that's facing them, is that...
I don't think Tranmere have got a dilemma. Who are they playing? Who came up in the draw for them?
Who did they get?
Yeah, you're the guy with the stats, mate. Where is it?
Well, I've just... clicked off that
we haven't got all night.
I clicked off that page. Well, they've got to get past Watford first. They drew with Watford, didn't they?
No chance. Watford are on fire, mate.
Yeah, exactly. And then, if they do beat, unlikely though it may be, if they beat Watford, they have to play the winners of Wolves or Man United.
Yeah, I take your point.
Wolves or Man United, yeah.
Yeah, so 2,500 is a very realistic price for Tranmere.
but you
Still,
do...
it's worth a fiver just in case.
Well, definitely.
No, this is not the kind of gambling activity or advice we want to dispense. A fiver just in case, is it?
No. And here's the reason why. Because football was invented by Sky in 1992, wasn't it?
Yes, the new football, yeah.
Yeah, and in the Premier League era, there's only been 2 clubs that have made it to the cup final from outside the top flight, and that was Millwall and Cardiff. And they both got beat. Basically, if you just look at who's won during that period, it's about 5 clubs. Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United and Man City.
But you've got a fancy, I believe.
Well, having dispensed all this knowledge about who you should be backing and who you should just say, leave it alone, I do fancy a little bit of Leicester.
Yeah, well, they're 10-1, it says
We're
here.
12s with Hills. So you can have a bit of that. I mean, Man United at 14s.
An elite club, no longer elite.
No.
Talking of which, another thing that happened at the aborted beginning of the podcast, just before Arsenal kicked off against Leeds, was that I, being a somewhat erstwhile Arsenal fan who's lost interest in that level of football in general, but particularly because of Arsenal, because they've gone from being an amazing kind of iconic team with a series of brilliant lineups into just an appalling ragbag of sort of international mercenaries with only a couple of really identifiably cracking players. One of whom's not playing against Leeds tonight, Aubameyang, because he's ill. He's got FA Cup sickness. Not FA Cup fever, FA Cup sickness. And he's having a rest.
What interesting. You laid Arsenal.
Well, yeah, so I laid Arsenal because they were 1.59 on Betfair. Now, Leeds, as you said, are doing pretty well at the moment, aren't they?
Yep.
Arsenal have looked totally lacklustre.
Yep.
Now, I'm watching this game because we're recording. I can only see it out of the side of my head. Well, the side of my eye. I don't have a special head. But I've laid them at 1.59. I'm trying not to be after time in here. People must believe that I did this 45 minutes ago, and then because of your poor recording technique, we had to start all over again. They've gone out to 2.54, which is an incredible drift when it's still 0-0. I mean,
Absolutely.
to me, I can't see how twos-on favourites, or almost twos-on favourites, should suddenly be 6-4 shots at half-time when they're the Premier League side. But there you are. So I'm faced with a dilemma, Sean.
Well, they've hit the bar and a couple of good saves from the Arsenal keeper. But yeah, the dilemma for you is, do you cash out?
Well, the cash out this is the topic we want to discuss this week, because I say this week, we don't do this every week. We should, but we try to. But it's a modern form of gambling accessory. It's like a sidecar on your motorbike, isn't it? And do they still have them? Probably not. I'm not a big fan of cashing out, but if there's one sport where I think
football, mate,
it is football where I think it's worth considering, because I've got mates who do these football ACCAs, like 6 teams, 7 teams, 8 teams.
Yeah.
And they never cash out. And the problem unlike with a horse accumulator, where one race happens, then another happens, then another happens.
Oh, this is all flying in, goals flying in.
Yeah, all 6 runners are still running right up to the last minute. It only takes one of them to come a cropper and the whole thing goes down. Having said that, obviously the stakes are very small.
Well, statistically speaking, most goals are scored in the last 5 minutes of each half.
You're doing very good with the stats tonight, Sean.
You like that, don't you?
Yeah, well, I've got no stats because my memory's like an empty crisp packet. There's only a few crumbs left in it. Anyway, get back to the point. Football cash out, yes. But with racing, I'm not so keen on cashing out a racing treble or something, because my view is, if you were right about the first 2 horses, why are you suddenly going to be wrong about the third one?
Well, exactly. Now is not the time to start doubting your judgment. And here's the other thing as well, is that you quite often hear this cliche that they come out and say, well, Arsenal can't possibly play as badly as they did in the first half. Well, if they're shite, no marks, who are useless, why should they be better?
Well, they can get a talking to from the manager at half-time, can't they? Whereas a horse can't really get a talking to from the manager halfway through the race.
I think you can turn a talentless waster round in 15 minutes over a cup of tea.
Well, at the moment, it's still half-time. I'm letting this bet roll for the
No, mate, we've kicked off.
Well, I can only see it out the side of my head, as I said.
Well, I'll tell you what, which is quite tricky and reminds me of some of our football watching in the past. Leeds are wearing a very unfamiliar kit to me, which is sky blue. And it reminds me of the time that we backed Burkina Faso in the African Cup of Nations. And
I don't remember that.
Cheering wildly when the Reds scored, only to discover we'd been actually cheering on the wrong team.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Always... If you have a bet in football, always make sure which team you've backed.
It makes it so much better.
Cardinal rule. Yeah, on that racing cash out thing, I think there's 2 ways of looking at it, isn't there? Because I've got a pal who had a 6-horse ACCA the day that at Royal Ascot Gold Cup Day last year when Dettori won the first 4 races.
Oh yeah.
And he cashed that out. I mean, we discussed it the night before, and we both fancied his first two mounts, and Stradivarius in the Gold Cup was a good bet, obviously.
Yeah.
But the 5th and 6th ones really weren't entitled to win, and they didn't. And he texted me the digital betting slip on the afternoon, and he said, "What do you think?" And in that instance, I said, "Cash this out, because this is just a lucky bet, isn't it? You've just bunged his horses in an acca, and the 5th and 6th horses probably aren't going to win, and they're offering you $4,500 or something." And he did cash it out, which worried me greatly when he nearly won the 5th race. And Turgenev, but he didn't. He eventually got beat about a length and a half, I think. So it was all good.
That whole scenario reminds me of a mate and I at the races, and I forget what we backed, some 25 to 1 shot, and doubled it with something else. And eventually he turned round to me and he said, "Well, Sean," he said, "of course you do realise that things like that will never happen to us." Which was a very pessimistic way to look at it, but sort of understandable.
No, I always believe in my horse racing bets, even though lots of them lose. But you were talking about your darts cash out in the first version of this aborted podcast.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite tragic.
Another good cash out. Another great thing about cash out, one of the good things about cash out, I'm not suddenly becoming a proponent, is that sometimes you can win when you've got a losing bet.
Well, yes, which I did on the darts the other night. I tell you, it's changed times for the BDO darts, which is now the poor relation to the PDC. Gone are the glory days of the 70s with Bristow and Jockey Wilson and the like. In fact, they're now being shown by Quest.
Quest?
Yeah.
Well, isn't Quest like programmes about submarines and walruses and stuff?
Nazi sharks and things like that.
And darts now.
And now darts. They've moved into the big time. But they moved the darts from the lakeside to the O2, which on the face of it, you would think is a step in the right direction. But I think they're actually in the shed, lean-to shed by the O2, where they keep the sort of like spades and brushes to clear away snow and stuff like that, because...
Is that where Shalimar play when they visit the UK for a greatest hits tour?
I think so, because Frozen on Ice is at the main event, and judging by ticket sales, which were appalling, they've told the players that they're having to halve their prize money, which wasn't spectacularly big in the first place. But anyway, getting on to the point of cashing out, the lads weren't throwing great, and my fella had his three goes at a double, and obviously the lad up next had 3 to win the leg, and for some weird reason, and this was with 365, they allowed me to cash out for a profit, having missed three arrows at a double. It was extraordinary.
Well, I mean, to be honest, does sound extraordinary, but only because I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I've never followed darts. The only good thing about it is I find it really boring, but I suppose it was a genuine working class sport, and it made it on the telly, and I suppose it was part of the arduous struggle against the privileged bourgeoisie for a while, but now especially now that it's on Quest, who's noticing?
Well, absolutely. I mean, wonder what the viewing figures are. 10, 12?
Well, you, for a start.
Well, so it's 1. They've got 1 anyway.
So, when you're watching this on Quest channel, have you seen any adverts for this football index?
Well, no. You were telling me about this, and...
Well, I'm amazed because I wasn't watching Sky Sports, mate. I was watching Vera on ITV3 round at my old man's place because he likes that, and it's not that bad for a detective series.
Is that the demographic they're going for? Watchers of Vera?
Well, they're advertising Football Index. There's a couple of things here that are bugging me. One, it's another sidecar to the motorbike, isn't it? It's another newfangled way, as you would put it, as another newfangled way of losing money.
Exactly.
And it's really complicated. You buy shares in players. Although it's called index, makes it sound like spread betting. It's not.
Well, that whole monetising of it, this city feel, is vomit-inducing for me, to be honest. And also, this whole having a good time, backslapping and high-fiving. And
that's what I was going to say. They're advertising with one of those, like the female on the Coral adverts, like one of these sort of, not a supermodel, but a sort of a woman who seems a bit attainable if you're a complete fantasist. And, with the risk of sounding sexist, I don't think she's a football expert. It all rings a bit untrue to me, and the whole shenanigans is very complicated. And on the instruction video, it shows you a little graph of Neymar's performance with a peak and a trough and a peak and a trough, and it's got little words saying on all the troughs it says buy, and all the peaks it says high, as if you're going to predict that and just buy at the exact peak and trough.
That's what I do with my stock portfolio, Robin.
Yes, obviously, but if you started diluting that expertise into Football Index, you'd lose your touch, I think. The whole thing of this girls, high fives, lads down the pub, social betting, complete load of bollocks. I see betting as a solitary, self-flagellating process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of it involves losing, even when you win.
And also, the other thing that always used to make me laugh was that you could tweet your bet selection and or winner. I mean, who wants to do that?
Well, I actually wrote a column about that at the time and said that Betfair introduced a button where you could tweet your bet, not your winners, your bet, and it was right next to the confirm your bet buttons. It was really easy to make it by mistake, and I thought, who wants that? And I think I said it's like a cross between a CRB check and that dream where you're walking down the street naked. Nobody wants to tweet their bets out, do they?
Absolutely not.
No. Although these high five lads with the semi-glamorous girlfriends might be doing it. I hate all that.
Oh, Robin.
Paddy Power. I really loved it when no Arsenal have scored.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Ah.
You should have cashed out. Listen, didn't I tell you that Arsenal couldn't possibly play as badly in the second half as they did in the first half?
Oh, yeah, is that what you said? Yeah, I didn't quite catch that. Well, never mind. At least it's given a good example of the folly of not cashing out in the podcast.
I'll tell you what, you have sort of pricked my interest now. Because I haven't seen this Football Index advert, I am going to look out for it now and decide if I am a fantasist if I consider this woman to be vaguely attainable, which I'm sure I will, because I have a very high opinion of myself.
I don't think you will. Anyway, moving on. Because it's a bit desperate, all this Football Index and betting on darts, isn't it? But it's that time of year, isn't it? There's no decent racing from the King George
to Cheltenham,
really.
No, exactly.
And it's a shame, in another lapse of professionalism, did we ever lapse into professionalism, that if we'd actually done this podcast before the King George, there's nothing worse than after timing, but I think we might have flagged up the winner.
We would have flagged up the winner.
Because he was the obvious, last year's winner, wasn't he? And the other two were far too short for a non-stayer and a horse potential non-stayer and a horse that maybe wouldn't be suited by Kempton.
I think that what compounded it was that obviously the favourite, who was the potential non-stayer, stable jockey had chosen him over Clanders Oboe, hadn't he? Which obviously put a significant bias against him, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. But anyway, we didn't do that.
No.
In fact, all we mentioned was Lord Halifax at a much lower level. But he did win at a decent price, didn't he? What was he?
Well, he was 20s and went off about, was it 9-2, 5-1?
I don't think I get any of the 20s, mate.
No, I think Joe Isherwood got all that.
Well, that's fair enough. It's his horse, isn't it?
Exactly. But that'll be our summer horse. We'll make plenty of money on that, Robin.
Could we not get something at a bit of a higher level than Lord Halifax? Well,
as Tomo said, a winner's a winner.
I'm not to diss the horse, but we need some classic winners or something like that.
Well, we'll do that closer to the time.
Yeah, let's skip racing for the moment because...
Anyway, never mind this. Your favourite sport,
NFL,
coming to the climax of its season.
Yeah, but the problem is that I had a very, very speculative punt on the Philadelphia Eagles at 50-1 because I quite fancied them to beat the Seahawks. And of course, last night they went to play the Seahawks and
wasn't there foul play?
The Seahawks came to play them. No, Carson Wentz, the Eagles quarterback, got thumped. And in fact, one of the players said it was a dirty hit, which sounds like a strong figure of speech. And the referee said afterwards it was fine. But he had to retire injured, and he brought on some 50... No,
and that's Tom Brady.
40-year-old quarterback who'd never played in a playoff before. And predictably enough, he didn't really get it down the field very easily, and they got beat. So
So he fell at the first hurdle?
Well, it was a bit of a crazed long shot, but I kind of saw a path through for them because the Packers are up next for the Seahawks, and I fancy anyone to beat the Packers. I'm a Green Bay Packers fan because of the sort of fan ownership structure, and they're one of the more genuine sort of setups. Well, they are the only genuine setup over there in terms of being a proper team club, local club for local people. They haven't looked right this season. I don't know how they managed to get the second seed and how they've come to be 13-3 for the season because they never looked right. And Aaron Rodgers looks like one of those old racehorse, those old those old steeplechasers that run in the veterans' chases that are past their best.
Yeah, no, I get you. Well, it's interesting because I was looking up wildcard teams and how many have made it to the Super Bowl. And
oh yeah, more stats, yeah.
Listen, I'm a genius, yeah? I can't help it. I'm not just a gorgeous face. Since 1970, when the Wildcat format...
the
Wildcard format started, 10 teams have made it through to the Super Bowl. 6 have actually gone on to win it.
10 from the wildcard.
Yes, 10 from the wildcard positions, yeah, which is pretty decent strike rate, I think.
Yeah.
6 have won it. And the last 4 to do it, the last 4 to make it have won it. Which sort of leads us back to the Seattle, I think, because you don't fancy any of the other wildcard posies, do you?
Well, I don't fancy the Titans to beat the Ravens. I don't fancy the Titans to beat the Chiefs, who are the ones I really fancy to win it. And I certainly don't fancy the Vikings to beat the 49ers. That leaves the Seahawks. And they're about 12-1, so...
We'll have a little bit of that.
Better go in now, yeah. Well, the Packers are only 7-1. In fact, they're 7-4 to beat the Green Bay Packers in that game. That's a good bet in itself, in my view.
I mean, the Ravens are very short, 15-8 in places.
Well, they've been the best side, and they've arguably got the easier half of the draw.
Yeah.
49ers are... I'd fancy the 49ers over the Ravens if it got to those two in the fight in the Super Bowl.
We won't have to worry about that because it'll be the Seahawks, mate.
I think it's going to be Chiefs Seahawks, yeah. There's a prediction for you.
Which you probably can bet on, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you can. But I'm not going to bother to look it up now.
No.
And I think that's about all there is to bet on at this time of year now, isn't it? Apart from
we'll find something else.
Well, the Labour leadership.
Oh, yeah, you've had a little tickle on that.
Yeah, but that's gone down. I backed the unknown Dan Jarvis, but I don't think he's going to run, because I backed him at 40-1 and now he's 80-1. He went in till at 20-1, but they've got to decide by tomorrow. By the time this podcast comes out, it'll be dead in the water. And I think it's a poison chalice this time round, and he'll come in for it next time.
I think Keir Starmer will win it, won't he?
Well, yeah, but he's got to get past the left wing of the party, and he's a bit ambivalent about Brexit, isn't he?
Well, he was a strong Remainer.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think, much that pains me to say it, Rebecca Long-Bailey is the most likely next leader because she's...
Continuity Corbyn.
Continuity Corbyn. And it's the way the voting is. And I mean, apparently only 1 of every 10 Labour members is a Momentum member.
Okay.
So it's maybe not as left-wing as people think.
Well,
I mean, Corbyn won it against 3 useless Blairite-type candidates, didn't he? It's not quite the same.
Well,
this time.
I'm backing Chuckaramuna.
He's not even in the betting. He's not coming back.
I think he's going to come back. Because it'd be like closing the circle. He's the only party I don't think he's gone for is the Tories. I think he's joined everyone else, hasn't he?
He is listed, but there's no prices.
Isn't Tony Blair listed as well?
Yeah, the same price as Ed Miliband. You've got to leave this one alone, mate. I don't think Lisa Nandy or Jess Phillips have got a hope in hell because they're not part of the Corbyn agenda. God knows what would happen if Ian Lavery got it. And beyond that, I don't see anyone with a shout. Maybe Starmer has got a good chance, but it wouldn't be. But if the membership isn't quite as left wing as the media like to make out, but. At 8-11, you don't want to be backing him, do you?
No. I heard an interesting conspiracy theory about when Corbyn was elected. Remember, wasn't it a fiver? You could have a half membership for a fiver, which entitled you to a vote.
Oh yeah, a load of people joined to vote for him.
Yeah, mostly conservatives, according to the conspiracy theories.
I think there's a grain of truth in that. I think it's still going to be possible to do that this time round, I should think.
25 notes, I think it costs this time.
Oh, does it? Okay. Yes. I'm not having a bet on it.
No.
And going by tonight's football escapades, I'm not going to have a bet on anything except horse racing for a while.
Well, I'm going to be turning over to Quest in a minute. It's one of my favourite channels now.
You turn over to Quest, and I'll have to sit and watch the rest of this game and hope that Leeds can score.
They will, don't worry, mate.
Which is not impossible.
Well, of course it's not.
It's a game of football after all, isn't it?
Exactly. In fact, you should press up now.
I won't be doing that, no.
No?
No.
Okay.
But I'm going to go and watch it. And we'll say to those who are still listening...
None.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've backed Arsenal tonight. Even though it was a ludicrously short price. And we'll speak to you next time.
Cheers, thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot. Goodbye.